We
Come up
wanted
with a
deep
witty.
dives, and now we're going to have 3 in 5 days. This is CDJ with Gaming Tailgate Podcast, joined once again by Tommy and JB. Guys, we're ready to get into it. Marketing
I
season is
think
here.
EA has some information they're ready to talk about. I mean, I don't know what the holdup was, but it looks like they finally decided to release the floodgates.
Here comes the train.
They've descended from the mountaintop. Before we get to the gameplay deep dive, let's do a little bit of house cleaning, the standard boilerplate stuff. Make sure you visit thegamingtailgate.com. Click on that Information Central. All the latest news and information, links to the blogs, the highlights, photos, everything will be in one convenient spot. When can we expect more of the deep dives, just so people are aware and ready? On Monday, June 23rd, the presentation, Campus Huddle. And on June 24th, the Dynasty deep dive video. So apparently no video for presentation based on that. But people asking us recently, will GameStop be doing another homecoming edition or a special edition for the game? It doesn't look like that necessarily, but in the last few days, it has come out that if you pre-order through GameStop, you can get a College Football 26 pennant, matching that style of the background that the cover athletes have with that tapestry or maybe your grandma's quilt with all the college logos on it. Quickly, guys, is this worth a pre-order? And it's not any extra like the homecoming edition was last year. You buy the game and they have enough of these in stock, you can get one.
To me, this is a little generic. I mean, I guess to each their own, but yeah, I would almost want it to be either team specific or more specific to just the game itself. But that's just me. Like
Yeah,
if
I was
I'm not a
already
fan
not.
of one of these teams that's shown, then to me uh it makes it worse. But that's
Right.
just me.
I wasn't a fan of the steelbook cover of this basically anyways, but I mean, they're not charging anymore. That's not a bad deal either to get something extra out of it.
Speaking of wanting to learn more about the game, Muttley's, which we mentioned a few episodes ago, last night they started posting some player ratings, and today they even put out team rankings. We could go through all 136, but I really don't want to. Just interesting that if this proves to be legit, Texas will be your top team media wise, Ohio State on the coaches side. Interesting to have that, and it got even more unique that I saw another site, teamcrafters.net, has what they are saying is a pre-release June 19th version of the rosters and ratings for College Football 26. So if you want to check that out, go to teamcrafters.net. I've only scrolled very, very briefly due to time constraints. Did you guys look at this? Does it look legit? Why? I don't. This is a lot of work for somebody to fabricate because I did notice that like, when I went to Nebraska, the rosters are updated. The ratings just on a very, very quick scan look realistic. I just don't understand. It's great if EA gave that to them to put out there, but I don't know why EA wouldn't hold this back for their own marketing reasons. That's what throws me for a loop.
Yeah, that to me is this and the Mutt stuff as well.
Mm.
Like I can't imagine EA wants it to come out as unofficial channels. I mean, they may not want to put their name to it because they don't want to highlight
Mm.
the college players' rosters. I don't know why now, but
Mm.
but yeah, it either is somebody on the inside is leaking it to these places, or EA is just trying to get it out there and doesn't want to tie their name to it for one reason or another.
That's my
So
guess.
when I looked through the rosters, like you said, I didn't go through a lot of them, but I looked through some of them, and at least for like the Sun Belt teams, they look fairly accurate on the surface. So I mean, it's yeah, I mean, it seems to be pretty legit, but at the same time, obviously these are still subject to change. I mean, we're still a few weeks away from launch, so it's
Mm.
yeah, you never know what happens.
Like I said, it's probably something they don't want to just get any heat for, so then they just leak it accidentally. But I looked at Nebraska, at least the top of the rosters looked solid there. So, but again, I mean, they also could just be guessing, and if they're wrong, then they just blame it on EA updating the ratings prior to launch. So, either way, they're coming away not looking too bad, I guess, because they have an excuse either way. But yeah,
But
so
it's a lot of work though to do this.
As I say, even just to fake this is a lot of work because you've got
yeah,
all of the individual attributes as well, like the speed and things. So yeah, if this truly is totally fake, then bravo to them. I mean, they did a good job, but yeah, at the same time, I to me this looks legit and just it's unofficial, so therefore, EA doesn't have their name attached to it. But
They don't
to
take the
me, I
heat.
don't understand. I don't understand why they don't do like they do for Madden and highlight the top 10 at each position or each position group or something like that. You've got however many teams it is. 136 now or whatever it
Hmm.
is. You've got so many different teams. Just highlight some of them. Highlight the top players in the SEC or something like that. To me, it screams for more attention there.
God, I think EA is still going to do their ratings week like they did last year. But it just seems there's something that we don't know about this. We're not understanding apparently. Maybe one of our listeners understands the backstory. Of course, here that gameplay deep dive. We're not going to show the video. I'm sure everyone has seen it. I've already seen it several times, read the blog several times, so my reading minutes for the day are fulfilled. Guys, first off, first question: what were your initial thoughts on that trailer? Narrated by Kirk Herbstreit, about a 5 minute video going through the gameplay improvements and changes coming to the game. Didn't quite get to everything because obviously there's a lot of stuff added. But what were your thoughts when you watched it?
To me, I mean, it was pretty good. All the information is nice, but the trailer itself is just kind of too sterile. I mean, I think part of it is because Kirk's still doing the voiceover for them, and I just don't get a lot of excitement from the way he's delivering it. Um, I don't know. It's just kind of just just reading from a script, obviously, but at the same time, it's not. I don't get excitement out of it. And I don't know if that's because he's been doing it for so long and so therefore I'm numb to it now or what. But there was a lot of great information covered there and a lot of great information that I can tie into the beta that really didn't generate as much excitement as I would have thought.
It's hard to do a deep dive in a 4.5 minute video. So it's to me, I
Mm.
don't really call it a deep dive. I call it more like of an unveiling because they just basically went bang, 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 just continuously went through
Mm.
things. They didn't really go in depth into a lot of things. So I wouldn't really call it a deep dive, though it was pretty cool to see kind of some of the things in
Mm.
action, especially kind of the pre-play stuff, the subs, the ability to adjust your zones and
Mm.
things like that, the tackling, the sounds. It's gonna, I think it's gonna be a nice little satisfying sound when you pop someone. It's gonna be a very cool moment for you. Um, and and then the playbooks, obviously, a lot more plays with a lot of coaches. It's gonna be interesting to see what type of plays kind of stand out and really make an impact.
Especially when I think the challenge that EA had was there's no brand new feature coming gameplay so you can just really market. I mean, maybe the physics-based like, tackling, but otherwise there's no big catchphrase. There's no big one marketable feature. It seems like every aspect of the gameplay got something addressed to it, which is what the community wanted and what the game needed. But I think it hurts marketing efforts because then you like the video. I think it helped having Kirk. I liked having Kirk narrate it more than the reveal trailer had, the generic big voice guy, because at least Kirk feels like college football and sounds like college football. I think that's why the reveal trailer didn't hit for me personally. I do agree with you, Tommy, though this one, good video. I liked what it showed, but it didn't hit. And I think it's because there's just so much they had to go through. I'm not sure I would have led with the playbooks and plays, but I'm not sure that was a turnoff either. I don't know what you do in a 4 minute video when you have 40 pages worth of improvements to really bring people in. Let's go through the blog here. We will not go through every point, just 99%. No, we will go through the blog, and if anything big stands out we want to talk about, we'll talk about it. Otherwise, we recommend people just go check out the blog. With the link will be on the TGT Info Central page. The blog starts with Scott O'Gallagher talking about kind of the motto and slogan for the developers. The big one right out of the bat is dynamic subs. I feel like we knew how this worked from reading text descriptions from the media who went down there, plus then the beta leakers later on. Is there anything you want to add on dynamic subs? We do get a look at it here again, which we have seen before.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would be curious about, and it's not 100% clear, but the overall rating, is that their rating based upon the injury, or is that the rating regardless? Because like some of them show 60s, whereas the starter is in the 70s or whatever. So is it that they're that injured and so therefore they're that, or is it because they're a backup, they have a much lower rating?
Yeah, because the wear and tear is going to take certain points off of certain aspects of the statistics. So you would assume that it would be adjusted, but you never know.
Yeah, I'm just curious if that's what it's highlighting here in the overall, or if it's, something else.
Tommy, did you mess with this much, or were you able to in the beta?
Y- Yeah, I messed with it a little bit.
Did it work well for you, or was it tedious,
Yeah,
or?
No, no. I mean, I think the thing that we've talked about that you're not going to have enough time to do everything. That's very true.
Yeah.
Especially I can imagine on defense. But if you have the
Hmm.
accelerated clock, which I was playing with 15 seconds, like we do in the Dynasty, if you have that, you don't have enough time to do hardly anything.
No.
So either we're going to have to extend the accelerated clock or, something. I don't know.
Yeah,
Gentleman's
at least
agreement.
they're
Nobody snapped the ball before 3 seconds.
at least there's a button to quickly reset your starters there. I kind of like that though.
Yeah. But I'm talking about even on offense, you don't have enough time
Hmm.
really. So,
No.
That was my when
um,
I read this, and I don't want to say it a million times, but to everybody listening and watching, when we go through all this stuff or when we read the blog, see if you're like me and think about, will there be enough time to do all this stuff? That's the $1 million question,
yeah, I mean, there's so many different adjustments that they've added here, and obviously we'll
which
cover
is
the rest
good.
of them or a lot of them. Yeah, it's
Hmm.
great to be able to make
Hmm.
adjustments, but like for me, the subs, that's fine. You can do them at the line of scrimmage, but why can't I also do them at the play call screen? Like if I'm
Hmm.
on defense, I can take that 10-second clock that I have to pick my play and make my subs. And okay, that's fine if they don't come out the next play, but they come out after that,
Yeah, like
or something like that.
hit a button to where you can, D-pad through the players on the play art and be able to just swap them out from there. It'd be kind of nice.
Yeah, I mean it's going to be tough to be able, and I mean imagine if you're on defense and you pick your play quickly and the offense takes 10, 20 seconds to pick their play. In theory, you're not going to be able to change your subs in those 10 or 20 seconds because you're waiting for the game to go back to the line of scrimmage. So, yeah, I mean, I'll be curious to see, if they refine this or if there's ways that we figure out to kind of go
Streamline it.
faster or something like that. But on
Mhm.
defense, particularly, is where I'm worried.
I'm going to mention this. It's probably more of a pre-staged item, but several people in our replies and comments to the Gaming Tailgate on Twitter on X at Gaming Tailgate, they mentioned the new score bug. A couple things now that we got to see it in action a little bit. Some things that stood out to me is that where the ball is currently located will change size depending who has the ball, and the backdrop for the down and distance will match the color of the team that has the ball. In the trailer, it seems like the home team had the ball almost every possession except for or every clip except for about one or two. Uh, the backdrop on the down and distance, cool, fine. Not sure the point besides it being cool. I'm not sure I'm a fan of the location of the ball moving back and forth, and we'll see that on the as you go through the if you go through the video and watch, you'll notice it. I'm not sure I'm a fan of that, but with the layout like this, maybe that's the only thing they could do, because obviously the bottom, if you start going second and goal or something longer down there, maybe there wasn't room to put it at the bottom where it probably belongs. I don't know, just something probably fits more on presentation wise. But we did have some community members who some love the score bug. I've seen it on social media, and then I also some people say they do not like it. I think it's one of those nobody's gonna really know have an opinion until July 7th.
I think it's okay. I've never one that pays too
Mm.
much attention to that. I get numb to it after the first week
Hmm.
anyways. So it's,
Right. Once you get used to it.
yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I can take it or leave it, but it has most of the information I want on there. So I
Hmm.
guess, I just don't like, I think we talked about this on previous ones. I don't like all the different fonts, like the
I
Utah
don't either.
Utes or the
Mm.
BYU Cougars. It
Yeah.
just, I'm not a fan of how that looks. But
There's too
again,
many.
yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Eventually, I won't even pay attention to it, but for
Right.
now, it's something that I noticed.
And it does
At
look like
least it
its timeouts are more visible this year than last year. I think. I don't know if we've seen a clip or a screenshot of when the timeouts is gone, but hopefully that will be a better indicator than we had last year.
and at least the score bug isn't as busy as Madden's was last year. It's still more,
Mm.
just what you need basically.
And the dynamic subs will be pressing up on that directional pad. So I'm assuming that the bottom will then be the camera adjustment. Probably figure that we'll probably learn that on Monday with the presentation, I would assume. One thing to mention with the presentation blog coming, this blog did not mention that I saw, and there was a lot in there. It did not mention that camera angle that we saw in the clip that came out on Thursday, announcing or teasing this coming of that Penn State player. He rolls out right to pass, and the camera kind of shifts behind him. I did not see a mention of that in this blog. I thought we would, but it was not there. So maybe that's a presentation item. Also, some filters when you use the quick subs like there. Defense, offense reset to starters, as JB mentioned. Real-time health insights. You get the wear and tear indicator, the overall ratings. They say assess each player's current effectiveness. So I would assume that updates as you wondered Tommy.
I kind of like how they like you'll see it almost looks like a cutscene or something that you can see how that's actually affecting them. I thought that was kind of nice.
Mm.
You're talking about like the quarterback kind of pulling at his
Yeah.
hamstring or stretching his arm or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was in the
But
reveal trailer. It's one that I don't think I re fully realized it the first time I watched it, but when I watched it the second time, kind of in slow motion, Malik Murphy in that Oregon State Oregon game when he walks to the line, stands there, and then he rotates his arm like he's hurt, and that's very much.
Yeah.
We'll get to that later in the blog, but I think they mentioned there's three or four different things at least that they'll do. Mention they grab their arm, grab their leg. There was one other one I don't remember what it was. Wear and tear, more depth, more control. That was something that people loved it, the idea in 25, and then we got the reality of it, and it left a lot to be desired. Scott mentions they want to improve some things with it. That's great. They want to make it so it's easier to sub players. That was the biggest complaint and issue. They wanted some somebody in. It was an act of God, unless they were a quarterback or running back. Anything beyond that was kind of difficult to do. You had to pause the game, and in my opinion, pausing that game takes you out of the game, like takes you out of the mood, takes you out of the environment, takes you out of the atmosphere. That should be accommodated here, according to Scott O'Gallagher. Some of the things you
if
can
it's a
do,
user game, you only get two of those. So
right? The good part is I shouldn't say good, but I guess at least with it not being fully effective in 25, it seemed like as long as your quarterback was healthy, your running back was healthy, you could probably withstand about anybody else being depleted out there. There's some auto sub settings and sliders. Default uses CPU substitution logic, which sounds a little scary. Keep fresh helps with the rotation strategies. They talk about Michigan using a frequent running back substitution, grind it out, which means keep your stars on and basically wear them out, the Tom Thibodeau style. And then custom players can sub based on the lowest health of specific body parts, giving you precise control. Interesting to see how that works. So is that
I thought I
basically?
saw one more that was in the excuse me was in the video. Like I don't remember what it's called, but it was like give them the hook or something like that. Basically,
Mm,
my guess is that it's you pull them out more quickly or something like that.
mm.
Like if they have any a little bit ding up, then you go ahead and pull them out. But I'm just trying to find it, but I haven't found it just yet.
It mentions that each position can have their own strategy based on wear tear, which is nice. You can access them from the main menu or the coaching adjustment menu. And if it's that in-game coaching adjustment menu, which is what is nice is when you're playing the computer, the play clock stops on that. So when you play the computer, that'll help a little bit to get you some time. But when you play a user, it doesn't pause. So that's something to keep in mind. You can also customize their healing between quarters or timeouts and every aspect of it. The impact from I'm not going to read these all, but normal tackles, hit stick tackles, sacks, blocks, impact blocks, just a lot of different options that I don't know about you, but when I read that, my thought is the first month is going to be people playing, offline dynasty, coming up with sliders and then getting together with the commissioner and league members to figure out what actually works. There's a lot to fine tune and a lot to go through.
Yeah, that's one thing that we've always asked for is more sliders.
Hmm.
And so,
It's a good
it's
problem.
these yeah, it's a good problem. These aren't gameplay sliders, of course. They're more
Mhm.
for just the wear and tear, but obviously that
Mhm.
ultimately impacts the gameplay.
Right.
But yeah, like you said, to me, having more sliders is a good thing.
Hmm.
If you are overwhelmed, then just leave them at default and,
Hmm.
take it what it is or whatever. But at the same time, it gives you the option to tweak them and set them how you want them to be.
I would guess most
yeah,
people don't touch these.
yeah, probably not. But it's gonna let like people in online dynasties and that it's
Hmm.
gonna make wear and tear what it should have been last year at least. They're gonna
Right.
give them the power to make it to what it should have been last year. So it'll be interesting to see if injuries are a result more often now, like they are. I know the trailer showed a couple of injuries based on wear and tear, so I'm kind of curious if that is a little more tuned as well into the wear and tear system to where if you're riding them till they're about dead, does it are they going to be injured for the rest of the year possibly, It'll be interesting to see how that plays out too.
Hmm. They mentioned in here that there are also weather-based modifiers into the wear and tear system, but I don't believe there's anywhere they actually mention specifics on that. We just have to trust we'll find out later.
Yeah, that guy was like holding his ribs in the snow. I was like,
Air's too cold, he couldn't breathe properly.
yeah.
Uh, uh, Going to what you mentioned earlier about the quarterback's health, if it goes below 60%, he'll show that in his pre-snap demeanor. Depending if it's upper lower body damage, he might roll his shoulders, shake his arm, or kick a sore leg as he approaches the line of scrimmage. Toughness will also now affect recovery, dictating how quickly each body part heals over time. So I guess toughness rating might be something that if you like to rely on your running backs. You might want to recruit for a high toughness rating.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's the thing is they come to it or later, but you have the ability to change like how often you players sub in and out based upon wear and tear or whatever. So if
Mm-hmm.
you do have a deep running back, that one that is great toughness or whatever, then maybe you do increase that to where he doesn't get subbed out as often. So the
Right.
idea that it's position specific is awesome.
Yep.
Yeah, it's like when have you really looked at toughness when you're scouting a player in recruiting? Now you're going to almost
Mm-hmm.
have to, especially if it's a star that you want to kind of ride,
Mm.
or you don't have much depth either.
The next section, they talk about archetypes and abilities a little bit, expanded archetypes, 10 brand new additions, and we'll learn more about those in the Dynasty deep dive on Tuesday. Here, the out of body experience. This is the screenshot that they released early on Friday morning to set up what was coming with the video. Heisman tier, as they describe it here, taking elite talent to the next level, the out of body player experience. They want you to, recreate those jaw-dropping moments where an elite player single-handedly changes the course of a game. What they've done, and the way I understand it, if a player already has a platinum tier ability, if there is the, I don't want to say option, but it sounds like if you play well enough with them and momentum is on your side, then it goes to the Heisman tier. So it will be that certain tier gets bumped to a Heisman tier, Heisman level. JB, your guest last week was correct on the show that if his performance drops, you'll see that red downward arrow indicating they've dropped a tier. I know when I saw this screenshot this morning, my thought was, I hope this isn't too frequent, too often. I want it to be something that,
OP.
yeah, whereas when I see it, I want to make it, if I see an opponent have that green flashing or fiery icon underneath the player, I want it to be a moment where it's rare. And I sit forward and go, oh no, I got to focus on this guy. I don't know that we know right now if this is infrequent or not, but what are your guys' thoughts on this new Heisman tier?
I mean, I do like the idea of like
Hmm.
elite players playing more elite. Some of the only issue is that some of the abilities last year were overdone,
Hmm.
like takeoff and quick jump
Oh, I
were
like takeoff.
overdone. Well, I bet you do. Yeah.
With
But
99 speed, definitely.
yeah, it's hopefully, I think those are going to be tuned down a little bit this year based upon what I've read, and hopefully, they don't get overblown even when you go Heisman. So,
Hmm.
yeah, I like the idea of players taking over the game, but I also, don't want it to happen all game, every game, or anything like that. I mean,
Right.
even if you get hot in the fourth quarter, it shouldn't be the whole fourth quarter that they're playing that way.
Hmm.
Yeah, my worry is the being overpowered because when you in the trailer, when they're talking about this, you see the wide receiver doing a one-handed catch that didn't even look like he was looking at the ball.
I noticed that too.
Yeah, I noticed that too. That's concerning to me. He wasn't the one that was, on Heisman. It was the quarterback. So for
Yeah.
the receiver to make that play, and you know, I don't know what the receiver's rating is on the game, of course, but at the same time, I don't want to see those often.
New offensive and defensive abilities. Again, they do let us know about two of them battering ram. It sounds like if you, provided that you finish your runs falling forward, it will take more out of the defender. Seems like more
Yeah,
of a,
Yeah.
like a
and
power back setting.
sorry, as I said during the section, they also showed kind of some of the new archetypes. It was about the ones that were leaked during the beta as
Mm,
well. They kind of, I guess, confirm those now. If you go slow enough on the video, you can kind of see a lot of those new archetypes included in
mm.
there, like physical freak for a D tackle or speed rusher. Well, speed rusher is still there. Raw strength for a left tackle. So yeah, those that basically confirms that what we saw in the previous that those are in and are there. So
That
Hammer.
battering ram could be dangerous because in the trailer, that guy took out two defenders at once with that.
Power back was already a strong meta in 25.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see how this is in battering ram. And it's got to be like some of those abilities. They've got to be tuned down on recruit generation.
Yeah, I was like,
Power.
I really didn't have a power back in my dynasty up until this year when I took over Florida State. And
Mm.
man, I'm having fun with them now, that's for sure.
It's fun to use
well,
them.
and in the blog here, even talking about the battering ram, it's not talking about breaking tackles. It's talking about delivering punishment and
Right.
causing wear and tear on the defenders. So I mean, it's kind of I don't know if the video was trying to highlight that ability that he broke those tackles, or if it just happened to be, he's a power back and he broke those tackles.
Or if he has this
Maybe
in
it's
conjuncction with other abilities,
showing
then
Exactly.
what
it could
Yeah.
be
happens
then it
if
could be a
it, yeah,
nightmare.
combination. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hammer is another ability. They mention thumping linebackers and box specialist safeties. And it sounds like if you reach that Heisman tier, you have a better chance of forcing fumbles on perfectly executed hit sticks. I don't know about you, but I rarely had a perfectly executed hit stick on 25.
No.
This was the lead off of the video, 2,800 new plays, 45 plus new formations. This is something on one hand, I love it. I love to have more unique plays, unique formations. But then, like just like when any law or regulation gets passed, you can't think about the pure intent of it. You have to think, how's this going to be exploited? And that's my thought here is there's a lot of plays that hopefully got tested or will be tested pretty shortly on July 7th. We'll find out real quickly how these can be used and abused.
That's my concern is they added all these new kinds of motions and double
Mm,
motions and things like that. Again, you're not going to have enough time to do some of those double motions in some cases if your accelerated clock is high enough. But then as well, the just are they all tested? Because depending upon what hash you're on or how close you are to the end zone or stuff like that, that can cause different plays to break or not work correctly. So, I mean, there's still plays in 25 that are, you know, more or less broken
Broke.
and will never work at all. So,
mm,
with this many additions, yeah, I love more football, more plays and more unique look and feel and everything. But at the same time, you know, they've got to get tested by somebody. So.
mm.
More that can go wrong.
They'll get really tested on July 7th. They'll have a whole new level of testing that goes in place
Oh,
on that date. They talk about some of the things they've added, and this is a lot of hardcore stuff. Misdirection. They don't see how that works in the game. New motion types. They have reload, bounce, escort, and boomerang.
As I say, the escort one's actually pretty interesting. That you have an offensive lineman who's lined up in the slot and he motions across the formation to basically be a running blocker off the edge of that formation. So it's yeah, pretty interesting, some of these things, and I'm glad to definitely see them in the game.
There's some
hmm
other formations we'll get to here that where they mention having big guys in there. That I mean that I really want to try out. But go to the double motion plays. For the first time ever, you can move multiple players pre-snap, which is something I've wanted, but I am worried about the timing and also the cheese factor of what could go in here.
Yeah.
Well, I'm assuming that those are designed double motions. It's not that you can do double motions. Like that's
Hmm.
always been an issue that if the play
Right,
has one motion, you can't do your own.
right.
But I'm guessing that's still, and this is a guess. I don't recall testing it in the beta, but I'm guessing it's still going to be the same. That it's just going to be a designed double motion.
I thought that too, but then how do you take his last line? You can now shape shifts information to stress the defense before the snap even happens. Does that mean
I, I think
if
that's
you pick the
just,
play? I
yeah,
read it
I
as
think
you could
so.
do it, but I understand what you're saying. I did not think that would be how they would do this, but I don't know that. Expanded to quarterback run and RPO variety. Smarter option routes. That was a big one for the community. They felt like the computer, especially, never took a smart option route. They always took the worst one. So it's good to see that that would be improved.
Yeah, I absolutely avoided run and shoot because
Right.
of that, because I could not rely on the receiver to make the decision that I would have had to make. So the timing on those routes is almost impossible. You think that they're going to cut in and instead they do the curl
Mm.
and the ball goes in the wrong direction. So
Gadget packages by formation. This will be an interesting one here. I think everybody likes to do the trick plays or like the gadget stuff, get their star player out there as many ways as possible. What they mention as you can sub a player into specialized packages across multiple formations. Maybe he's the wildcat quarterback or motions from flat to tailback. Again, that's going to get a real stress test on July 7th. I'm interested to see how that works. So they added some of the authentic packages and bizarre formations from the 2024 season. The Penn State shotgun game between gate variants. Interesting here, the Ole Miss Wildcat do swing. Snap it directly to your defensive tackle. The Rebels did it 20 times last season, and now you can too. Uh, that could be fun. The Rice Pistol Wingback, the Western Kentucky Power Eye Hulk. This is the one that two defensive linemen lead blocking, fullbacks leaking on play action. I interested to see how that works. If will the defensive linemen have the proper ratings? Do you need to get the proper ratings so they can block properly on offense? I love the idea. I want to see the
Or
execution.
you just gonna automatically get smoked on play action on that formation.
It's right. That's I like the idea. I love they added it. I just want to see the execution. ECU trips off over weak, an off balance, excuse me, an unbalanced formation. Duke wide Y off trip stack. It's a new evolution of the veer and shoot, built off a new of 11 new wide formations.
One thing that's interesting here I want to touch on is the here in the Penn State swinging gate, they have the dual QB packages, meaning you actually have two QBs on the field at the same time, both in the backfield. Obviously, you would want to have one that's more of a passer threat and one that's more of a runner threat, but this could also be very interesting and be curious to see how players put that into effect because it could be a lot of fun. Again, all of these different additions that they have, they seem like fun in terms
Hmm.
of just they may create a lot of cheese, and so your tighter dynasties are going to have to do rules or something like that. But at the same time, just a matter of being able to have more fun with it and more unique and creativity.
All right, guys, all our listeners and viewers. I know we always embellished our height on Road to Glory quarterbacks. We're going to have to really do it this year. Field vision being in the game. This is interesting. I really want to see how this works. To summarize the way they explain it, and we saw in the video, basically, we don't know the details based on the quarterback height in relation to the offensive lineman. If you are a shorter quarterback with tall offensive linemen and you try to throw over the middle and there's not, you really can't see each other. It sounds like the icon slightly fades to tell you if you throw this, your accuracy will be decreased. That's the way I understand it from the video and the blog. So I'm interested, obviously, in the nuts and bolts of this. Does this mean you should only go after tall quarterbacks? Will this force users to, if they get a shorter quarterback, to start going out of the pocket more? What are your guys' thoughts on this? I like the idea, or does this mean you should go after short offensive linemen? I mean, what is this going to do to recruiting the way this works? I like the idea. Again, this is one of the things I need to see more of.
I was gonna say I always loved recruiting those 6'7" offensive tackles and having fun with it. So now you got to recruit a 6'7" quarterback to go with them, I guess. So,
Right.
but yeah, I am very curious. Is there a cutoff that if you're above 6 foot, then it doesn't matter, or is it truly depending upon what your offensive linemen
Mhm.
are and what's the difference and that kind of thing?
Right.
So, I mean, yeah, you're definitely going to want to go after those 6'3" quarterbacks and be able to give a little bit more room in theory. So. But yeah, I mean, I like the idea. I mean, that obviously in college it's less of an issue because there's a lot more shorter quarterbacks, but at the same time, it height is an issue. So, yeah, I'm curious to see how it actually plays through.
And they do mention here, JB, the size of the offensive and defensive lineman matters and proximity of the pocket. Because I was already thinking of ways around this. Like if you drop far enough back, will you have increased vision? So maybe now we need to go after a 6'7" defensive lineman to decrease the vision and accuracy. JB, what do you think of this?
Or just drop back 30 yards
That sounds
like
realistic
the
to
old
me.
like the old days and throw it 100 yards, you know. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see if if you truly are really struggling with passing in the pocket, then yeah, you're almost gonna have to be forced to do that. And me, I don't really play with mobile quarterbacks too much. So for me, I guess I'm gonna have to look at the height of the quarterback now when I start recruiting.
And it is interesting. They mentioned that smaller quarterbacks under center, especially on quick drops to throws between the numbers, will have visibility limitations. That's why many real life quarterbacks favor shotgun or pistol looks. I'm really to see how this works. Like I like the idea. Again, just with any video game, the execution is going to be really what matters. Enhanced quarterback progression system. I thought it was interesting. They didn't feel there was a big enough gap between elite and lower tier quarterbacks, and I agree to an extent. But I would also say, at least computer wise, I know when in Dynasty playing the computer, to me it felt like if you played a highly rated quarterback, you knew the computer had a chance. If their overall was, let's say, low 80s or lower, to me it felt like you kind of knew you had a win. So I'm interested to see that how they build upon that to make it there's more of a difference. I felt there already was one, but apparently on EA side they felt there was not enough.
Well, to me, I had some experience like you, but I
Mhm.
also had a lot of the opposite, to where I
Mhm.
would be playing a 75 rated quarterback and he would complete, 14 of 16
Mm,
passes for,
true.
350 yards or whatever. So, I mean, hopefully it's just more consistency to where the low rated
Right.
quarterbacks play like low rated quarterbacks.
I can see that.
But yeah, that's, I'm hoping that's kind of where they're going with this.
Mm.
But yeah, you need to have a different feeling between, and I'm guessing this is all related to CPU because obviously a player progression to go through their receivers and everything, there's no awareness there for the human control players.
Mm.
But for CPU, hopefully it truly does have a difference to where they're not going to see that open receiver as quickly or something like that.
I wonder if on some of those lower rated quarterbacks, if their awareness was pretty high and that's why they were tough.
Could be. That's a good point. You're right. I do see times where the lower ones would have a great game, and I think that's what leads to people online wondering if the games are scripted because they go back and see that the computer was,
It's rigged.
75 or 80 or something overall, but they're playing like a 92. So I can see that. That's a good point. They've made improvements, so kind of the meta of 25 doesn't exist. Running on double mug and cover zero blitzes to overwhelm the AI quarterbacks will not be a thing this year, hopefully. And then they
Well,
get
and
into,
and the
go
thing
ahead, sorry.
is that they it still should be like if you send 6 or 7 against a 5-man front, you should still get
Mm.
that pressure. So I mean, I'm hoping it's not too overdone, but at the same time, you know, at the same time, if you have a highly rated aware quarterback, then yes, he should see that blitz coming and
Mhm.
get rid of the ball a lot faster or something like that. So
And if the offensive line stinks, it probably shouldn't matter how many you're sending because they're getting through no matter what. If they're
yeah,
playing
yeah.
a really good defensive line, you're right. Execution will be interesting on this one as well, which is the theme of the night. Then they go into defense, and then they start off with the physics-based tackling. This is something that the people, the college ball media who went down there and the preferred YouTube creators had said that when they go, played 26, they noticed it was better, and they really noticed it when they went home and played 25. That's when they really realized, like, wow, I miss this feature that 26 has. I didn't play a lot of Madden 25, so I don't really have an opinion on how it worked in Madden 25, but it sounds like they've enhanced it from what Madden had.
Well,
What
I
were your
played
thoughts going
Madden
through this?
25 about 10 years ago.
Well, I'm talking about the 2.0,
Arr!
the 2.0 25,
Oh,
the
sorry,
sequel.
sorry.
Yeah. They're saying that tactics with better ratings won't just win more often, they'll win more distinctively. Sounds like ratings and other issues will play more of a factor. That sounds like it did not in 25. They want weaker attackers more vulnerable to being dragged or broken through. Mentioned more variety in tackle outcomes, glancing blows, squared up stops, forward falling momentum, all driven by weight, speed, angle, and user input. One other thing I did not see in this blog that we've seen in screenshots and in videos is how do you make your player reach forward? Is that a ratings thing? Is that exactly what they're talking about here? That maybe there is no user control, but obviously if your offensive player is better than the defender, maybe he's more likely to reach forward. Something we still don't know.
Kind of
Yeah, that,
wonder.
that could be awareness depending upon,
Mm,
if they're close to the goal line, they know to do that, or
mm,
maybe they do it in the middle of the field and the ball gets knocked out or something like that.
mm,
But
Like if the user like for defense with the steering that they've added into it, you
mm.
kind of wonder maybe maybe your what you do with your left stick after contact maybe initiates what you're doing there.
They mentioned a lot of new tackle types, and I think we will skim through, but I know reading it, I liked what they added there.
yeah, and overall, I mean, obviously offense is the, big, leader for the game,
Mm,
but here they made a lot of defensive
yeah.
improvements here,
Mm.
especially the physics-based tackling, but then even a lot of other stuff that we'll get to in a minute that truly, it gives you a lot more control on defense that you didn't have last year.
They mentioned quarterback hit improvements is a small one that I thought was interesting. Improvements to preserve realistic arm positioning during sack transitions. They've minimized unnatural snapping of the quarterback's arm into place during sacks. This is something that's been an issue, I think, in football games forever. I don't know if you remember back on the PS3 days, there was times that you could hit them when they were here, and somehow they were able to bring it through the defender and not lose it. You know,
Or they'll be literally upside down and still make the throw or something like
Yeah, get the
that.
yes,
pass off. Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
So that's nice. Late hit throws. They mentioned that people were frustrated with tonight with the unrealistic effect of when you had them dead to rights. They mentioned both ensuring they're more realistically aimed near receivers, increasing both catch opportunities and interception risks. I don't know if I completely agree with that, but I kind of want to see that in action before I condemn on that one.
Yeah,
Also,
because like
sorry that
Yeah.
one thing you don't see in 25 is like when a quarterback gets hit and there's a duck where it's going to be easily intercepted. It's usually halftime, it's just going straight into the dirt a foot in front of them.
Well, and yeah, there needs to be definitely more ducks, but to me, my main concern, and this was less of an issue in the past, few months, I would say, but definitely early on, that you would have a late hit and throw the ball, and it would literally be aimed right at a middle linebacker, kind of thing, like not like a bullet pass to the middle
Hmm.
linebacker,
hmm
sort of thing. So hopefully they don't increase the interceptions that way. Instead, like you said, it's more of a duck that's up in the air that you can pull down or something.
No, the more interceptions will come later in this blog, Tommy, which we'll talk about.
But then also, if there is like more ducks like that, it gives the wide receiver time to try to be a defender in that kind of spot too.
They mention tackle contact accuracy. The way they describe it is reduced instances where tackles didn't fully contact the ball carrier yet triggered tackle reactions. Does this address some of the issue where you were running through the line, for example, and they barely had a hand on you, were able to, I don't want to say warp, but they were able to get you that way? Does that fall under this umbrella?
Yeah, I would say it has to because if the physics-based tackling, the tackle you're describing would never happen. So,
Hmm.
I mean, yeah, they probably need to have an animation to where they have a defensive lineman reach out and try to pull on your jersey or
Hmm.
something like that to slow you down or something.
Right.
But yeah, in this case, it seems like, and maybe it's the whole hitting the speed boost won't trigger the instant tackle either. So I
Hopefully.
mean that's the hope here.
Right. Momentum preserved after contact. That'll be nice. Realistic post tackle movements. As you mentioned, JB, really early on, there is going to be audio feedback to accompany every big hit to make it feel more visceral and impactful, according to Scott O'Gallagher. Stunts and twists. This is something that we got to briefly in the video. Tommy, do you want to explain how this works? Is this something, I mean, as you show here, it looks like it's on the play call. So how does this work?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. They kind of covered in the blog as well, but
Mm,
basically as you're picking a play, so in this case you're picking the X play, you hold X down and then you scroll up and down through the stunts menu and then release X to select that play and that stunt. So it's, if you just tap X, it's not going to have a custom stunt. You're going to have to
mm.
hold X to choose that. It does not keep it for the next play or
I
anything
was just
like
going to ask
that.
that.
Yeah, it's just for that one time. So, I don't know if there's a way to set, they mentioned also that there's a way to set it from the play call menu. I need to go back and reread that, but again, I don't think it's, or excuse me, so you can set it here from the play call menu, but you can also set it pre-play when you're on the field. You can change your defensive lineman to do it differently. But again,
Mm,
I think it's every single play you're going to have to call a different stunt whenever you want them. To me, this is a great addition.
hmm.
My only fear is that it's going to be another tactic to that can be overpowering and overdone. I mean, if you have a great offensive lineman, then hopefully they can still pick up these stunts. But maybe if you have a weaker offensive line, then they can't or something like that. But
Hmm.
again, with this combined with six-man blitzes and things like that, I can only kind of fear for what this could cause from a not just from a meta standpoint, but just from a cheese like abuse standpoint.
Right.
You actually see in the video how quickly that guy got that guy that studded on the inside got through that defender to get to the quarterback.
You can also call one from the pre-play menu. Tommy, you mentioned this in the pre-play menu, press D-pad left, then R1 or RB to access the available stunt options for your current play. So D-pad left before was like a defensive line, so that makes sense. That stays with that.
Yeah, yeah, for
There are
sure.
12 unique stunt types available.
I'm curious if you have a five-man blitz out of a 3-4 to where the linebackers are up on the line, is there a five-man stunt or
Hmm,
something like that? So yeah, I'm curious on how they do some of those things.
Yeah, it's like if the linebackers are on the line, is that going to cause congestion and not, not have it not execute properly?
I mean, in theory, it's possible. I mean, if you tried to mix too many stunts with the wrong blitz or something like that, then yeah, you're going to have too many players trying to hit the same hole and end up, like you said, causing a clog. So there's going to be people that get burned on this just playing around with it, especially early on. But hopefully by, middle of the year or so, you've realized when to use it and when not to.
hmm. Offensive line, defensive line interaction is another section in this blog. Block steering it. It's one of those things that it seemed like when word first came out, I only heard, maybe I'm wrong or missed it, only as defensive line. But they mentioned their offensive line can also do this. What you do is once you're engaged, press right trigger and left stick or R2 and left stick to begin steering. They mentioned you can do that for either side. Dumb question here. How can you change posts, or is this when you need to start as a lineman to start the play offensively to do this? Because you can't do it once the play is started if you're selected as, say, the quarterback or running back. not thinking this right, or is this what you guys select the offensive lineman pre-snap, stay as him to do this?
Well, the thing is 25, you cannot select offensive lineman at
That's what I
all.
thought. That's why I'm confused.
Yeah, so
Talk myself
I
through this.
think, yeah, they're saying, offensive line, but I think what they're describing there is just for defensive line. The offensive lineman will be able to use it as, the CPU offensive lineman will be able to use it. In 14, you could do those things. You could
Right.
take control of an offensive lineman, but
Hmm.
in 25, you could not. So, yeah, I have to think that for offense, it's just the CPU is going to use this, but on defense is when you can use this to your advantage.
Hmm.
The interesting thing that's mentioned here, and there's always been a question mark of doesn't matter, but based upon this, it says strength and weight do impact this. So that's something that everybody's always said. Does height or weight actually matter in the game? Can you put a 200-pound, you know, linebacker at D tackle and still be effective? So hopefully this does, put that into effect. So if you have a 99 strength offensive lineman and a, 150-pound defensive tackle, then hopefully he can kind of push him at his heart's desire.
It's kind of
Right.
like the old pro wrestling games where the 150-pound guy could body slam Andre the Giant. And then they
Defensive players will now maintain their assigned gap space on play call and alignment. That'll be a welcome addition. Smarter blocking mechanics. A lot here because blocking mechanics in 25 weren't the greatest in the world. Improved targeting system. They mentioned some schemes where the blocking is now drastically improved in terms of clarity and accuracy.
and there's your veer.
And they mentioned if you got a pulling guard against a lighter safety, that should be a win. And if your center is climbing into a 250-pound linebacker with poor leverage, you're in trouble.
Yeah, I mean, these all sound great. That's the thing is if I have an
Right.
offensive lineman that is doing his job really well, then I want him to be effective most of the time.
Hmm.
But then if you have a poor offensive lineman going against a great linebacker, then the linebacker is going to keep his gap and the offensive lineman's going to misplay his assignment or something like that. So hopefully it truly does play out like that.
And they mentioned on the impact blocks and collision wins, outcomes based more on weight class ratings and momentum differential. Pass protection, this is something we had in 25, but it sounds like they've improved it in terms of controls and also the logic. He mentioned smarter targeting selection. You can untarget defenders is something we knew that Madden had when they announced their gameplay features earlier in the week.
The only thing here is, and I understand in real life it doesn't happen, so I'm not sure how to account for that, but there in 25, you obviously cannot use slide protection for running plays. I'm not necessarily saying that I need it to be on running plays, but at the same time, if I have you know, somebody that's just beating me all the time, I want to make sure that they are being targeted and handled correctly. So,
Hmm.
I know you can, do some things there, but at the same time, you cannot, highlight them or set them as the mic or anything like that to make sure that they get blocked on a running play. And
Right.
that's, it causes some formations to literally be broken. Like I've just in the past month, I've found a formation that I love, but
Hmm.
anytime I try to call the play, there's a defensive end that's completely unblocked every single play.
Hmm. You can untarget defenders like we found Madden. Simplified slide protection. This is something that the controls last year, where if you weren't quite used to it, you didn't know how to run it. I know it took me a little time to get used to it. Want to slide left, you tap slide left and right stick left. Want a full slide, double flick the right stick. So now if you started using 25, you need to relearn the controls just slightly. But it sounds like their goal here is to make it more simplified.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is that you almost never do the full slide. So the idea that makes it not more difficult, but less likely that you'll use it, that's to me, that's a good thing. But yeah,
Hmm.
you'll have to relearn how to do it all.
Really got to figure it out in 25. Custom zones is something, one of the things we knew about pretty early on with the game. Basically, sounds like a defensive equivalent of custom stems where you could adjust the wide receiver depth on routes. And that, maybe I'm wrong, but it wasn't every route you could do it on. I know I tried it on several routes that you could not do it. This is going to be the defensive equivalent. Again, pre-snap, select the defensive player you want. You can tell them to help to adjust the depth and angle of where you want them to go. Because what do you guys think about this? It's one of those, I like the idea. I just question if a user is going to ever have enough time to ever do it.
Yeah, that's my concern. It's almost going to be you have to, choose what you're going to do. You're not going to be able to, you know, change your custom zone. You're not going to be able to substitute players, and you're not going to be able to change the stunt all within the same pre-play. So you got to kind
Mhm.
of, pick what you actually want to do, focus on getting the sub in and out first, and then, on the next play, make the custom zone or whatever. But yeah, there's a lot going on pre-play that
Mhm.
it's going to take a while for even the best players, I think, to really get it down to be able to do it, everything they really wanted to do. But
Mhm.
again, more control the better. But
Yes.
it's also it's going to be overwhelming, especially for people who aren't used to those things.
I think the controls have to be quicker pre-snap. I don't know if you guys have noticed, like in 25, like there's a slight delay, especially if you're trying to do, say, adjust your coverage and then do the predict a play. Sometimes it'll bring up the text from the opposite one. Like if you just said
Hmm.
you're predicting a pass play, and then you go adjust your coverage, the menu that pops up it says, you're predicting the play, but I don't know that it actually is doing that or if it's behind the scenes correct, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
So that they've
that's
got
what
to
I've
get some of
always
that figured
wondered
out.
too. That's what I've always wondered too when the text was incorrect. But this is gonna be good, I think to adjust on the fly. Say you're getting beat in the flats on RPOs a lot or something, then you can bring those guys in tighter. If you're getting beat deep a lot, you can bring those guys back. Yeah, like I said, it's all going to be about how quickly you can get to it. We mentioned this offline before we started the show. It's like, how do you do this? It's like, well, it seems like you're going to move your cursor to that guy and then do the play call screen and then be able to adjust it. But it'll be interesting to see how quickly you can get those in.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm guessing it's kind of like you can make adjustments, on the defense today. For example, for the defensive line or for the linebackers, you double tap to the right, and then you pick which player you want to adjust, and then you can make the adjustments. Do you want to blitz him or QB spy or whatever? So I'm guessing in
Mm,
this case the same way
mm.
um, for defensive backs, for example, you would just I think it's double tap triangle and then probably select what player you want and then hold L1. Actually, no, it says it there.
Yeah.
So
Tap.
select the zone defender you want, press A or X, and then L1 to bring up the zone depth. So yeah, again, I think once you get used to it, you'll be able to do it quickly. Like again, I've gotten to the point that I can make plays to individual players pretty quickly, but it takes a while. You have to kind of get into that rhythm and
Right.
figure it out.
And they,
Half
I
of
know,
practice is going to be pre-snap adjustments rather than practicing plays.
and it's interesting it says tap L1 because for the custom stems, people got confused. Offensively in 25 is that they tapped it and it didn't work. You had to hold L1. So that's a difference between the two sides of the ball.
I'm guessing surely it's going to be the same this year, whether it's one or the other, it's going to be the same. Surely.
You know what they say about
Surely.
that. Surely.
Yeah, yeah.
Route commit. This is an interesting one. I want to see this in action. In this part of the blog, Scott relays a story when he played Travis Hunter at last year's media event. And they talk about shading is about positioning, selling out is about commitment. And that's kind of what led to the inspiration to route commit. You can let it lets you assign an individual or entire secondary aggressively jump routes based on your read of the offense. In pre-play, you press R1, then left or right on the left stick, and your entire coverage unit will aggressively break towards either side or outside breaking routes. This is almost like the way I understand it, Tommy, you correct me if I'm wrong. It's almost like what we have in 25, where you can, predict run left, run right. Except this is just for the secondary. You're telling them play is going left, play is going right. Am I well, I
Uh,
guess I tell you you're inside outside breaking routes, but this is kind of the same thing. You're telling them certain players this is what you think is going to happen.
yeah, yeah, I'm curious as well. I didn't see this in the beta, so I can't comment on that. But at the same time, yeah, I think that's the general idea is that yes, it's going to be a pass, and they're probably going to go to this player at this type of route or something like that. So if you play an opponent that always throw drag routes, then maybe you do, move your guys inside and have them playing shallow or something like that, and then maybe if you're fast enough, you move your free safety to where he's covering the goal line or something 30 yards away. But yeah, long story short, I think that's the idea, but again, it's going to be, are you going to be able to have time to do all of these things?
You're going to need four hands.
Yeah, yeah,
But if you watch like a competitive player online, it's going to sound like they're sending out Morse code distress signals pre-snap. It's
yeah.
just going to be a ton of clicking just nonstop going
It's like
on.
watching the professional Tetris players.
Yes, you're just here, click, 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 click. This year they mentioned the man-to-man game is more varied. Again, talking about coverage improvements.
Yeah, I mean that's one thing I'll say about 25 is that they're playing the defense sometimes plays way too tight, even
Mm,
on, double or triple move routes or something like that. The defense is still right on top of them, and yes, in some cases that happens, but to me it happens too often. But I'll be curious to see if this plays better or what. But like it says it, leverage and timing position, those are important. So
mm.
hopefully that's how they play out.
And speaking of leverage, they mentioned how they've reworked leverage and how it affects outcomes. Shading coverage now also matters more than ever, pairing it with the route commit and leverage to create, as they say, a complete defensive toolkit. Shade over the top, you'll gain cushion to protect deep, but also see sharper cuts separate underneath. Then if you shade underneath, you'll clamp down hard on short routes. I know my opinion was in 25, you had to shade over the top quite a bit. Like especially if you knew the player wanted to go deep, you almost had to do it.
And even then, it still wouldn't matter in a lot of cases, depending
True.
upon the
It
defense that you
helped, but
called. Yeah,
right.
it helped, but yeah.
Yeah.
But especially when you're in match coverage or something like that, it didn't matter
Right.
at all. You could do it over the top and they would still get burned,
Yep.
incredibly bad.
No eyes, no
Especially when
picks.
you're facing a guy with 99 speed and takeoff.
Yes, you were toast before the play even started. No eyes, no picks is something we heard before that if they don't see it, it's going to be tough for them to intercept it. We don't know if that applies to wide receivers, though, based on the trailer today. I would say it maybe not.
On that
Yeah, they
Heisman
still need to
tier.
tune that a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, the idea that at least the defensive backs hopefully are playing more like it's been probably 10, 15 years, but Nick Saban really kind of pushed the defensive backs to where they react to the receiver instead
Hmm.
of, watching for the ball or whatever. You don't get as many picks, but you have more incompletions and things like that. You
Mm.
knock the ball out. So
Right.
hopefully that's what we see here. And, they go on to mention that 50-50 balls play more like 50-50 balls. So to me, that's a good thing. I want to
Mhm.
be able to, on third and long, throw that deep bomb and try to, sort of a short Hail Mary sort of thing
Right.
that I've got a great receiver, let him go get it.
SWAT or pick. This is something it sounds like they've made a focus this year that you really want to make that quick decision. Do you go for the interception or do you go for the SWAT? As you mentioned here, the jump balls 50-50.
I'm curious there on that one specifically, and on the previous.
Mm,
If let's say you're playing linebacker and you user switch to a defensive back, can you do the quick pick? Like you can today.
mm,
To me, that's can be overdone, and so hopefully not.
mm.
Hopefully you get burned if you try to go for that pick and they are not in position or something.
Yeah.
Right. And I think it's later on in this, but I'll mention it now. He mentions that if you go for the SWAT, your defensive player has a higher reach or higher area they can get to. So basically, you need to decide quickly if can I intercept this ball? If I can, go for the interception. If you cannot intercept it, go for the SWAT because there's a better chance at least they'll reach it to knock it. So I think that's a interesting one. But overall, with a lot of stuff they've added gameplay wise, it feels like even in 25, they want stick skills to matter. And I think they're kind of continuing to build on that. They mentioned
Mhm.
here, this is where I get a little nervous. Too many wide open interceptions felt incomplete last year. Uh, I don't, it's one of those yes and no, in my personal opinion, because it's one when I throw the ball, I feel like there's way too many. He should have dropped some of those. But obviously when I'm on defense, it's like, man, there's in your hands. So that's I think there's bias on this one, but
And
maybe
every
I'm
wide
alone on
open
that.
interception, the guy was basically halfway to the end zone because he was going downhill the whole time. It was never
Right.
a wide open, hey, I picked it, I'm stumbling over here. It was always I'm picking it and going a beeline right for the end zone.
Well, and I think obviously sliders come into play. I don't know exactly what
Right.
our sliders are set at, but between that and the ability to, I can't remember what they call it, but basically that defensive backs can catch everything, basically, those did, to me, create a lot of interceptions that shouldn't have. But to me, if you have the duck passes and then you can catch passes you're supposed to catch, well, that's fine as long as it all balances out at the end.
Right. We're just gonna be those no doubt INTs will stick, right? I understand as a video game aspect that yes, that's you want that. If you feel like you're in position and had the ball in your hands, you should catch it. But there's a reason a lot of times defensive backs play defensive back and not receiver because they don't have those hands. There's a lot of times in football that oops,
Yeah,
had it
it's
and
right
dropped it.
at
So I
them,
mean,
and yeah, yeah,
I can only
it
go by what his
happens.
own words here. He says those no doubt INTs will stick, not more likely to stick. It says will
Right.
stick. That
Yeah.
scares me a little bit. But execution, I'm not going to write them off. Let's wait till see July 7th how this plays out. Defensive playbook updates. We will just go through this. They didn't give us any visuals of these of the player, but a ton of new defensive formations. Are there any that stood out to you guys?
Yeah, the single mug that they're talking about right there, those are
Mm,
very interesting. It's, double mug. Obviously, you've got two linebackers right over the center.
mm,
Now you just have one linebacker over the center, so it's almost like a five-man front with,
mm,
a single linebacker dropped back. So it's to me that it it actually allows you to kind of have that flexibility of blitzing and causing concern for the blitz while also being able to have the drop back linebacker. The other thing that they mentioned here is that they brought back the 2-4 formations to where you'll have two down like D tackles, for
mm,
example, and then two standing in the old days it was two linebackers. I'm guessing now they'll use the edge position or the rush edge, rush
mm.
end position or something. To me, those again, I would love to bring those back. It allows more flexibility. You can kind of do that today, but it's not a default package or not a default formation. It's you have to kind of change the packages up, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
A lot of new defensive plays here, and they give a sample of new plays that incorporate default defensive line stunts. This year's playbook also includes new bracket coverage concepts designed to help the defensive account for the offensive top receiving threats. Well, this is good. Some of the bracket plays they mentioned are one double slot, one double tight end, double bracket switch Willie. I just wish that the play art would be back on the PS2 days, I believe, where the art actually showed where the
Who
defenders
it's
go. Yeah,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I don't know if that can be brought back the way the system works now. But at least on the PS2 days, you could just scan the playbooks. You wouldn't have to read the names. You could see the bracket, you could see the player telling you what it was, whereas now you have to stop and read it.
Yeah,
You may
no,
not
I
even realize it's a
agree.
bracket. If you just skim it, you think, oh, that's straight up man. No, somebody's getting doubled on that.
Yeah, yeah.
RPO integrity. This is something that JB you mentioned earlier, and I know it. There are some RPO plays that seem like you just could not defend it. Like somebody was getting wide open, or it was pretty tough to defend. Based on what they say here, they're trying to make it the defense be RPO sound, meaning they have clearer jobs based on alignment and route action.
No, I think this is a good thing. I mean, it's
Mhm,
almost kind of like the option. Do you focus on the quarterback or focus on the pitch man? It seems
mhm,
like it's going to kind of do that a little bit more. Um, I don't think you have any control on who they focus on, but based upon who they're supposed to, they do a better job of focusing on them.
mhm.
That was something that was a big issue last year, is that you'd have a corner that would just instantly run straight to the running back, and then the RPO is wide open. The
Wide open.
RPO to the screen is wide open. So,
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, hopefully, obviously, that plays to ratings. Hopefully, that plays better that way. But yeah, I'd be curious to see where that comes out at.
This is interesting in the coach settings. We're going to have safety adjustments. I like the idea of this a lot. You can adjust safety depth, their width, and also a
Yeah, the
midpoint shift.
depth especially is interesting. If you've got a very run heavy defense, or excuse me, run heavy offense, then you
Mm.
can bring them close, and yeah, you're probably going to get burned from time to time, but at least you can kind of stack the box a little bit more in theory, especially if they're throwing underneath and running all the time. You can kind of play against that. So,
It's kind of like
and
your
then as well, the safeties deep for those Nick Harbor plays, you can, have guys back there already in theory.
And
so
it's
it's like
without
in theory you're putting that setting in there instead of just doing show blitz all the time to bring guys up.
exactly. I was just going to say that. That's the way
Yeah.
I infer this as well. There's also a new RPO coaching adjustment, which I think is interesting. As I mentioned here, it allows you to fine tune how the AI defenders handle zone read, peak, and traditional RPO concepts. So now it sounds like that coaching adjustment, before it was already quite a few items this year they added with how you handled option, for example. Now it sounds like all the things they've added, it's going to take a while to scroll through that menu.
Yeah, I mean they've added some. I'll be curious to see how well,
Mm.
how difficult it is to get through there. But it may be one of those things that you kind of set it and forget it or something like that. But yeah,
Mm.
we'll have to wait and see.
And I mentioned you can reset them with L3, but then that's frustrating if there's one thing you definitely want to stay there. But
Right.
I suppose that's better than having to change 10 of them. Show blitz, we mentioned this earlier, was kind of frustrating. JB, the entire defense came to the line, which not what you wanted, but you needed part of it for what you wanted to do defensively. You can set it now for just linebackers here. They mentioned, for example, real-time coaching 2.0. This is one of those that you don't really know what's going on exactly behind the scenes. It sounds great, and I'm not doubting it, but it's one of those that it isn't like there's a setting you can toggle, or there isn't like there's a pop-up that said, okay, real-time coaching, that's what got you. It's one of those you just have to kind of trust, behind the curtain how it works. This year they mentioned that it sounds like the computer is going to be smarter. Is that the perception you guys got from reading this section? It sounds good. It sounds like it could make for a challenge if it's done properly.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like if you call the same play over and over, that they're going to adjust to that even better this year. And it doesn't seem to have to be just the same play from the same formation, but just rather the same play type or something like that, if you're calling that in certain situations. The idea, I think, is that you can set this up and then be able to burn them if they overplay it or in the right place or something like that. You call it 4 or 5 times in a row, and on the sixth time you call a play action off of it or something like that. So, but yeah, it is something that the computer has to get better at
Mm,
defending what I'm doing and stopping what I'm doing. Because right now, it doesn't really seem to come into effect today. So it has to get better there. That's one thing as well is that I asked for on offense last year, but defense as well. But on offense, know who your strongest players are and play
mm,
to their strengths. You could, be against Boise State and Ashton Genty would get 10 carries.
right.
And, instead they would throw for, 30 passes or something like that. To me, the computer has to know where their strengths are and what they are better at than you in certain situations.
And it's interesting they mentioned on a defense is real time coaching, but I didn't catch anything real time coaching on offense.
Yeah, and I don't know if that's because only defense got it, surely not. But I mean, at the same time, defensively, that's where they have to adjust more on the fly against you. They have to
Mm.
be able to stop what you're doing, sort of thing. Whereas on offense, you're supposed to be attacking something, but
They mentioned
hopefully it's both sides.
I also mentioned in passing defense, the nine box and concept tracking, a back end intelligence system that tracks where your passing game is attacking. Uh, it's one of those need to see it, but it sounds like it could be a good addition.
Yeah, again, it goes back to if you're just throwing drag routes over the middle all the time, then, in theory, they should be able to get that more often. I mean, for for those that are not picturing it, the nine box would be the 5 yard, the 10 to 15 yard, and the 15 to 50 yards or whatever. Those are the different zones between left hash, right hash, and middle. Between all of that, you get the nine different boxes. So
Mm.
hopefully they know where to look and where to stop. So if you're always going to your receiver on the left side deep every play, then they get better at stopping that.
They also mentioned what they call the little things. I don't think we need to fly through these too much.
The Madden one, I do like the where the players are moving before the play. That one is nice. I mean, they basically kind of shuffle around and everything, but only up to the point to where the offense is about to snap the ball. So before the offense can even snap it, they're kind of shifting around and moving from deep safety up to the front or from deep from to the front, dropping back deep or whatever. It is nice from the standpoint of you can't instantly know as soon as they come out that they're in too deep coverage. You have to wait for them to get settled before you can see where they're actually going to be playing.
More bat down attempts from pass rushers. This is a welcome addition. Linemen who gain leverage but can't reach the quarterback will try to knock the ball down.
Yeah, again, hopefully that's related to the short kings out there that they have more passes batted down than the tall guys.
And home field advantage. This is something we knew early on and got a little spooky when you read those descriptions about how it was going to play out. My perception when they go into the video and through the blog is that they didn't feel like kicking was tough enough with some of the things they added. I just hope that it'd be nice if the computer had some effects on them when they kick.
Yeah,
Absolutely, yeah.
computer was pretty invincible on kicking last year.
Yeah.
I mean, they would miss some, but at the same time, like you said, the end of the game, it did not impact them. So, yeah, it's definitely one of those things that to me, it seems much of the same as last year, maybe just kind of tuned up a little bit. But
Right.
I will say the one thing that they mentioned, I don't know if we've just haven't gotten to it yet, is that if your receivers are closer to the quarterback, they are more likely to get the hot route. So, for example, if you're trying
Mm.
to tell your running back to stay in a block, then he's more likely to hear it than a wide out that's, out on the edge of the field. So.
Yep. They
Yeah,
mentioned that here. The hot route disruptions. If for the receiver, the less likely they are to hear it.
yeah. Like it seems like the only new thing in there is the distorted clock.
Which isn't terribly wild
No,
because
if
I
you
think
can count.
Yeah,
if you can
I
count,
was
you
gonna say
generally
if
know.
yeah, and the thing is at least they didn't show anything that, does it if it gets to 5 seconds, does it hide automatically or whatever? But no, from what we saw, it just if you watch it for a half a second, you'll see what the play count is, right? Or
Now, if it's sped up and slowed down, that'd be kind of interesting, but that's kind of hokey.
yeah. Well,
Might be a
no, I
bit
mean,
much.
I think that's the thing is if you have a really low awareness and you're playing, at LSU or something like that, then you should have instances to where you cannot figure out what the play clock is because there's too much going on.
Yeah.
During night games and rivalry battles, it can get even more intense. The accuracy meter will become completely transparent. The ball will fade out as your kicker lines up, and the power meter feels white, reducing your visual feedback. That just seems
The
like cruel and unusual punishment at this rate.
Yeah, because I mean that meter was going so haywire as it was when you're kicking like 40 yards out.
To wrap up the show, we did ask the community following the blog and the video coming out. We want to know what the gameplay aspects had you most excited for 26, and which aspects do you need to see more of or just to play with to get a better feel or understanding. Matthew led off. He's excited for the new wear and tear updates and also for night road games and for rivalries to see and feel how the new stadium pulse and clock distortion affects the quarterback's composure. Kicking field goal difficulty looks to have been taken up a few more notches too. Yeah, that has me spooked. That the clock distortion term had me nervous before. I'm not really worried about that now, but kicking on the road in a big game, I am nervous. John says he just won the national title this year, so good timing to wrap that up before the new game comes out. Jagnol says after watching the video, I was like, meh. But after reading the blog, they really added in so many small tweaks and quality of life features that really makes me excited again. I think that's a good way to put it. There's just so many little things everywhere that got touched that I don't think we'll appreciate until we play retail on July 7th. Bill Kahn, being able to customize players' depth in pass coverage will be cool, especially against online cheesers who exploit the same play, which is why he doesn't play online cheesers. Making field goals even tougher on the road ensures I always go for it on fourth down. Cy Hart says Power, Eye Hulk, and the various pistol wingback sets seem exciting, though no pistol Maryland Eye yet, as does double multiple pre-step motion. I'm most curious on how the new defensive forms and sets will be without going too deep on studying defensive coaches. Starscream War Eagle says, "Can I actually play defense now?" I hope so. I don't know. There's a lot you can do though. I mean, not I think that's the theme of the night is there's just so much you can do. Will there be enough time to do it?
One thing before we
Mm.
break here, we mentioned earlier that there is the presentation and the Dynasty blogs coming next week. Somebody asked on Twitter, "What about Road to Glory?" And
Mm-hmm.
obviously, there's nothing here, but at the same time, there's more time next week, and then as well, first part of next week, in theory, they can use that. So they have to, in theory, they have to cover that because there's, a decent amount of updates there, and then as well, eventually they'll have to cover Ultimate Team. So, this is not the last that we'll hear from them. I would not expect.
It wouldn't surprise me if next week, at the end of the week, we get Madden stuff because they're going to want to push people to buy the MVP bundle. So they can't go radio silent on Madden. So that would make sense if Road to Glory and Superstar Mode go back to back at some point, whether it's the end of next week or the following week. To me, that makes the most sense because that's the features that really tie in together between the two titles. If you want people to spend $150, those are the ones that I think you're gonna have to hype closer to that purchase point.
Yeah, and like you said, especially this year, they tie in together to where you can
Mm,
take your Road to Glory player into Madden and play
mm,
the career there. So
mm.
so yeah, in theory, maybe they do a joint blog there or a joint, showing you from the start to finish how you can get there.
Well, with that, we'll wrap up this lengthy edition of the Gaming Tailgate Podcast, breaking down the gameplay deep dive for College Football 26. As we mentioned, presentation and Dynasty up next. We're going to be busy, busy guys over the next few days. For Tommy and JB, this is CJ. Everyone, thank you for watching and listening to this edition of the Gaming Tailgate Podcast.